Audacity Games is a company that very much is trying to keep the origins of Activision alive. Forget that the company has now become an evil conglomerate that is going to eventually take over the world, and try to remember a time where Activision represented everything right with the video game world. They gave their developers credit front and center on the cartridges and in advertisements, and they released quality games that would go on to be some of the most fondly remembered on the 2600. It makes sense that Audacity would want to continue that tradition, because it features the all-star developers from those games. The Kitchen Brothers, David Crane, and the developer of today's game, John Van Ryzin. And if that name sounds familiar, well, it should. He created the fantastic H.E.R.O for the 2600, 5200, and just about every other console of the time. And that game is often considered one of the best of its time. So the question is, did Audacity and Mr. Van Ryzin simply make H.E.R.O in space? Or did they make something totally unique and worth owning for the 2600? Let's find out. Alien Abduction was released on cartridge from Audacity's website on June 15th, but the game was already available for the Atari VCS as of May of 2023. I personally waited for the cartridge, and I'm glad I did. This cart is clearly modeled after an Activision cartridge, and that's a really nice touch. The box and manual both feel and look high quality as well. But enough of that stuff. Let's talk about the game itself. You take control of a hero who is trying to rescue a princess that has been abducted by aliens, and they have laid traps for you all over their caverns. Luckily, you're equipped with jet-powered boots, an energy defense system, and of course, your trusty plasma gun. And that's all you'll really need to complete your objective. You will have to acquire more energy and health, as enemies will constantly be draining the latter, and you constantly lose the former as you play. The levels start out pretty short with some simple enemies and very few floors, but things ramp up gradually. When I first turned the game on, I wasn't sure what to do, if I'm being 100% honest. I fell through the floor a few times and died, but it won't take long to learn that you need to hover and try to land on solid floors, or try to time a crouch right as you hit the hollow floors. You'll face enemies, some of which can be destroyed with a few shots, and some who seem to be invincible. It takes trial and error to figure out which is which, but it doesn't take long to get pretty much everything figured out. The tall robots can't be killed with your plasma gun, but most green creatures can. The stationary guns can also be killed, usually with a single shot. You start by working your way down to the princess, but other levels will have you traveling left and right, and eventually, upwards. Believe it or not, this is a nice variety, and each direction has its own dangers and challenges. And this game feels like an Atari game we might have purchased during the 2600's life. It has elements of H.E.R.O, but it mostly feels like its own thing, in my opinion. The floors are more narrow, and you have different rules for traveling about the level, along with more enemies. Some are lifted direct from H.E.R.O, however, like the snake that pops out of the walls, or the flashing red walls that you absolutely cannot touch. You collect hearts that act as lives, and you'll want to go out of your way to grab those. There are also traps that will be sprung in some scenarios, like a drill that will block your path or enemies that will fly out of the walls, so you need to always be on your toes. You'll also want to grab all the energy you can, because as I stated before, you're always burning through it. The gameplay feels solid and fun. I sat down to record my first experience with the game and just write down some initial reactions, and before I knew it, over an hour had flown by. I made it all the way to level 20 in that time, and I knew I was instantly hooked. The levels do repeat a bit, but they also get harder each time you play through them. And there are new ones being thrown in constantly, so even when you think you've seen it all, there will be new layouts and challenges awaiting you. The only frustration I experienced was occasionally getting stuck on walls, and having to wiggle around a bit to get through. This seems to be a symptom of the tight spaces, but was nothing more than a minor annoyance. The sound is pretty sparse, but it ultimately works. There was nothing that was offensive to my ears or any of my senses. And the graphics, well, they aren't the best on the console, not even close. But once again, they work, and you can tell what everything is supposed to be, and what you can touch and shouldn't touch. Even with its basic sound and minimalistic graphics, the game communicates everything that it needs to. It really feels like a classic Atari game, but one that has been informed by everything learned in the years since. It's clean, it's fun, and it's addictive. And I think that's everything I wanted to say about Alien Abduction. It's nothing fancy, and there isn't a lot to describe or talk about. It's a game that just works for what it is, and should take most Atari fans back to their childhood. But now we have to give it a score, and the best way to do that is to abduct the game into the pros and cons system, and give it a deep probe for information. And as always, we start with the the pros. Sorry about that. For the pros, I have to say that despite falling to my death the first 3 times or so, well, it was easy to learn the game and grasp what you're supposed to do. It has that familiar feel, and Alien Abduction does a great job of informing the player on what they should know. The levels can move in any of the 4 directions, and they each have their own challenges and feel, which is nice. The game plays fair, and any time I died, well, I felt like it was my fault, and it also controls great. You can tell that this John Van Ryzin guy knows his stuff. And it also managed to invoke nostalgia of H.E.R.O without feeling like a copy. It combined just enough of the old with just enough of the new. And despite the audio and graphics being a little basic, well, they all work. But now we have to get on with the cons. And first, I have to say that getting stuck on the walls can be a little, well, annoying. This seems to be a symptom of the narrow corridors. And, well, I guess that's it. I really enjoyed Alien Abduction a lot more than I anticipated, and I have a feeling I'll be playing it a long time after this review is done and posted. Because of that, I'm going to give Alien Abduction for the Atari 2600 5 CX40 joysticks out of 5. That's right, Alien Abduction gets the Atari Network seal of excellence. I recommend you grab a cart from Audacity Games whenever you have the chance. Or pick it up from the Atari VCS store if you own that. It was a lot of fun and a game that I continue to play again and again, even after grabbing the video I needed. If you didn't like the original H.E.R.O, well then you might not enjoy it as much as I did, but I think that it's different enough from that game that you might enjoy it anyway. Alien Abduction brought me back to a simpler time, when Atari was fun, video games were cool, and things were simple. And I hope it can do the same for you. But now that I've given you my take, I want to hear what you all think. Do you agree with my score, or am I drunk on that Audacity Kool-Aid? What score would you have given the game? And do you prefer this, or Circus Convoy, the other Audacity release? Let me know the answers to all this, and more down in the comments below. And please, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you haven't already. We put out 2 videos a week, so hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload. And thank you to the following classy Atarians who support me on Patreon. Without their help, the Atari Network wouldn't be able to review the games we do, or replace and upgrade equipment when the need arises. You can support the Atari Network too over at patreon.com/7800progamer. In exchange, you get exclusive audios and videos a few times a month. So thank you to My Own Celestial, Head Trauma Bob, OG Hugo, Jolt 7800, Ball Gobbler, Socrates 63, Vince the Spook, Mr. Shua TV, Jeremiah Thomas, and Huge Ass 79. I couldn't do this without all of your support. And with that, it's time to wrap up yet another review here on the channel. I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, a princess abducted by aliens for the 20th time, from a kingdom called the Atari Network, and I want to thank you for watching. And don't forget to stay classy, Atarians.